representatives in the conduct of committee meetings and plenary sessions through electronic platforms. The first meeting of the Committee on National Defense of the Commission on Appointments in the second regular session of the 18th Congress is hereby called to order. Secretary. Please call the roll.
The Committee on National Defense, Commission on Appointments. Chairperson, Representative Ferrer. Vice Chairpersons, Agaraw Jr., Alvarez Jr., Heron, Go, Lacson, Pimentel III, Tolentino. Members, Cagas, Chipeco Jr., Ontiveros, Marcos, Noel, Pancho, Po, Ramirez Sato, Revilla Jr., Villar, Subiri. Ex-officio members, Zamora, Almario, Villanueva, Advincula, Drilon.
Mr. Chair,
2 members physically present and 16 members virtually present. The chair hereby declares the existence of a quorum. Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. It appears that some of our colleagues are virtually present while the nominees are here physically present. May I know, Mr. Chairman, if we have amended our rules insofar as the how we conduct our meeting, Mr. Chairman, or do we have to adopt new rules before we proceed with the committee deliberations on the nominees, relative to the nominees present here, Mr. Chairman?
Majority Leader, can you respond to the query of Senator Tolentino?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the information of everyone, we have an existing rule in our present CA rule, Section 27. And for that reason, we are adopting the HOR, the Congress rules and Senate rules, Section 27 giving us the authority to adopt Congress rules. And that is why there is no need yet, as of now, to amend our own rules to have this meeting that we're having right now. But at the proper time, Mr. Chairman, or right after this committee, we will be amending our own rules to have our own written rules applying the rules of Congress to our own rules.
Senator Tolentino, does that answer your question?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can direct this to the good majority leader, is he referring to Section 27 of the rules, which states, if I may quote, that the rules of the House and the Senate shall be supplementary to the rules of the Commission?
Yes, Your Honor.
But perhaps, Mr. Chair, the rules of the Senate applicable today would probably refer to the rules adopted by the Senate relative to the COVID-19 situation. Are we in effect saying that with reference to the timeline, the supplementary rules that we are now adopting or about to adopt would terminate upon the cessation of the COVID-19 pandemic? Am I correct in that conjecture, Mr. Majority Leader?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honor, the rules of the Senate, particularly Rule 11 on meetings and reports of the committee, Section 22, as well as the rules of the House of Representatives, particularly Rule 9, Section 35 speaks of, to cut it short, speaks of virtual meeting, is on the plenary meetings, rules on the plenary meetings. Mr. Chairman, while this was made because of the present pandemic to address the need to still meet even without doing so physically, I do not think that these rules were made just for the pandemic purposes. And if you say that we should revert after the cessation of the pandemic, that is not for us now to consider, because the rules of the Senate are already on virtual hearings are already part of the rules, and so as and the same with the House of Representatives rules. So, Mr. Chairman, it becomes suppletory. Then we are basing our rules now for this hearing on this section, section 27. If by sometime in the future there will be new rules by Congress, then we will also adopt the same when the time comes, Mr. Chairman.
One last question.
Yeah, please proceed.
To further clarify this. Our rules.
Before that, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Coco Pimentel virtually.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be allowed to proceed, our rules, as well as the rules of the House, if I'm not mistaken, refers to rules applicable.
Hindi, ito kailangan dito. Hindi, kasi marami kayo. Ano lang yan, may alphabet ata. Kaya ayun. Ano ko, basta, importante yan. Kasi kapag ano, tingnan mo na lang ito. Kaya nilagay ko na rin ito nga dito. Minute kita.
Mr. Chairman, na-mute po yata.
Nawala.
Button red? Nakamute button red or?
Yan, pwede na.
Can you hear me, Mr. Majority Leader?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
My final question to clarify this, and so as not to delay the proceedings, is that my understanding is that the rules of both houses would apply to the members of both houses. And insofar as the Commission on Appointments is concerned, what I'm referring, this representation is referring, is the presence, or the supposed to be required presence, of the nominees or appointees about to be deliberated and confirmed by the Commission on Appointments. Are you now saying, Mr. Majority Leader, that the rules of both houses need no amendment insofar as the convening of the Commission on Appointments as they refer to non-members of both houses?
I'm looking for the Mr. Chairman, the rules of the Senate speaks of both houses, speaks of the authority of both houses to conduct hearings virtually. And they do not speak of the necessity of appointees for our purpose, Mr. Chairman. They do not speak of the necessity of resource speakers to be physically present. It is just a way for the body to conduct meetings and sessions. That is the present rule of the Senate and the House. And that is why we are holding this committee hearing based on that, or anchored on Section 27. Later, Mr. Chairman,
For
later,
the information of Senator Tolentino and the Majority Leader, as well as the other members of this committee and the commission, we'll be having a Rules Committee meeting at 11 o'clock after the committee meeting that we're holding right at this moment. So we can discuss further amendments to the amendment of the rules mentioned by Congressman Almario later at 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I defer to the omnibus ruling of the chair insofar as the presence of the appointees, especially the members of the armed forces, here are concerned. So, Mr. Chair, I think it's about time that we can to proceed. We can proceed.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
Chairman, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Briefly and for the record, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to be joined today in this meeting of the Committee on National Defense by Senate Minority Leader Franklin M. Drilon, who's been elected as a new member of the Commission. I'm glad to inform this committee that we, in the minority of the Senate, have designated Senator Frank Drilon as our minority leader in the Commission on Appointments, and that I'll be formally making this manifestation later in plenary. Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Let's proceed. The chair has an opening statement. Esteemed members of the Commission on Appointments, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As the Vice Chairperson of the Committee on National Defense and upon direction of the Chairman of the Committee, Congressman John Ferrer, I am calling this public hearing to order. Today, we are tasked to deliberate on the ad interim appointments and nomination of 15 senior officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines that were submitted to the committee's jurisdiction for its consideration. While this august body recognizes the challenges we all bear amid the pandemic, I deem it proper to reiterate the very essence of the Commission's authority under the Constitution to carefully and conscientiously deliberate on the fitness, competence, and qualification of the nominees and appointees. Hence, it is incumbent upon us to conduct this hearing where members can both virtually and personally observe, examine, and review the important matters concerning the fitness, competence, and qualifications of the 14 appointees and one nominee who are physically present with us today as leaders of our Sandatahang Lakas, a distinct title vested in them by the Constitution as the protectors of the people and the state. As a housekeeping announcement, any member who wishes to be recognized will please raise their hand so you will be properly recognized by the chair. With that said, let us proceed. Mr. Secretary.
Please stand up or raise your hand as your name is called. Arauz Robert F. Musico, Antonio G. Parladi Jr., Angelica Torres, Carlito Bueno Jr., Armel Tolato, Edgardo Arevalo, Rowen Tolentino, Norwin Tolentino, Edgardo De Leon, Generoso Ponyo, Danilo Carino, Andrew Costello, Viale Bondoc, Lyndon Soliesta. Nomination, Corleto Vinluan Jr. Mr. Chairman, all the appointees and nominee have complied with the submission of the documentary requirements as provided for in Section 24, Chapter 6 of the new rules of the Commission. Likewise, on various dates, their ad interim appointments and nomination were referred by the Senate President and CA Chairperson Vicente C. Soto III, to the Committee on National Defense pursuant to Section 16, Chapter 5 of the new rules of the Commission, and were published in 2 newspapers of general circulation and broadcast over PTB4 pursuant to Section 2, Article 2 of the new rules of the Commission. There is no opposition filed against any of these ad interim appointments and nominations. That is all, Mr. Chairperson, Your Honors.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Kindly administer the oath to the appointees and the and nominee.
Kindly raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding, so help you God? Mr. Chairman, they are now all under oath.
Yes, please take your seats. Thank you. The floor is now open for inquiries, if there are any. Nobody wants to ask. Yes, the minority leader, Senator Drilon, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like the highest ranking official up for confirmation is Lieutenant General Parlade. Is that correct, sir? Is he?
That is correct, Senator Drilon.
Thank you very much. So I'll address this to General Parlade. May I know?
General Parlade, kindly occupy the seat in front. Yes, please proceed, Senator Drilon.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just what are the thoughts of General Parlade on the statements of General Gapay regarding the regulation of social media under the anti-terror law? We read in media the comments of the AFP Chief of Staff that in crafting the rules and regulations on the implementation of the anti-terror law, he wanted to include a regulation, as part of the rules, the regulation of social media. Senator Lacson was the principal author. He defended this on the floor. We voted for the measure after we introduced the safeguards to the measure. And to be candid, and immediately I would say that we do not recall any provision of the anti-terror law which would authorize the regulation of social media. May we know your thoughts on this, General Parlade?
General Parlade, before you respond to that, kindly inform the committee ano ba yung designation mo sa armed forces? Please proceed and answer the question of Senator Drilon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Lieutenant General Antonio G. Parlade Jr. I'm the designated commander of the Southern Luzon Command based in Lucena City. Now, in answer to your question, Mr. Chair, I support the statement of the Chief of Staff. In fact, we've been discussing about this social media. Social media, when the Constitution was written, it did not have social media as a platform. They're talking about media, and of course, we support press freedom, we support freedom of expression, and the media is one of those. But through the years, technology has evolved. Now we have social media, and we all know that the social media is being used by elements, by organizations to destabilize the government. As we speak, even in the social media, they're talking about how to make bombs, Molotov bombs, and we are speaking here of some organizations, legal organizations, discussing about how to make Molotov bombs in social media. So I think the Chief of Staff is right about discussing this issue, the IRR on the use of social media, if only to make sure that this aspect of preventing terrorism or the spread of terrorism is addressed.
May we know, Mr. Chairman, which portion of the anti-terror law General Parlade is referring to? Because I don't recall any. Maybe the good general can refresh our memory on this.
Mr. Chair, I cannot remember the specific section or clause, but it's referring to preparations or being part in planning for a terrorist action. And I think this is one of the aspects of that law that's really important for us to discuss. It's the preparatory acts. These are very good. This is a very good clause of that law, and I think this is one aspect where we really have to look at the actions of people preparing for terrorist action. And as I've mentioned, discussions on how to make bombs, how to make Molotov bombs, and how to prepare for attacks is happening as we speak. It's happening in social media, and we're able to monitor it, but we cannot do anything about it. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just to be a specific example, if Juan de la Cruz avails of the social media, and to use your own example, General Parlade, to make bombs, you're saying that upon the effectivity of the anti-terror law, you can impose prior restraints so that Juan de la Cruz can be banned from accessing social media? Because he is known to be using social media to make bombs? Is that the regulation that you're looking for? I'm sorry, but I don't hear you.
Sorry. I cannot specifically, I don't have a specific idea how we are going to deal with this, but like if we see people talking about how to assemble bombs, how to make bombs, there has to be a specific way, there has to be a regulation on how for instance, for us, for the security sector to be able to monitor what they're doing and probably to ask the courts, convince the courts that there's a probable cause, there's probable cause can be established with what you're seeing there, and I don't know exactly what we have to do and place in the IRR to make sure that these gaps would be addressed.
You know, Mr. General, monitoring and asking the courts is completely separate from regulating social media. That's why I'm asking you whether or not you are saying that the anti-terror law authorizes the state authorities to regulate social media. And maybe the prior question is, so what exactly do you mean by regulating social media?
I guess, Mr. Chair, it's not really about regulating social media. I guess it's regulating the way people avail or access the social media and the terms and conditions on what they are allowed to do in social media. Social media per se should be accessible to all, but the actions of
Yeah.
people using this platform should be regulated. So I don't know exactly how we can do that, but I think that's the idea of the Chief of Staff.
General Parlade, and with the permission of the of Senator Drilon,
Yes, sir.
you know, General Gapay should have qualified his statement because it's all encompassing. When you say regulate social media, that's it, regulate. But you know, there are qualifications in the provisions of the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 that we have to establish the intent and purpose, di ba? Kailan establish mo yung motive. It's not prior restraint, but the use of social media in the planning, preparation, and even the execution of terrorist acts. So while I admire your statement that you support the statement of the Chief of Staff, it's lacking in substance. Dapat ang sinabi niya, it should have been qualified. Kaya nga nag-steer ng I myself commented that it was an ill-advised statement coming as did from the Chief of Staff. So pagka nagsalita kayo, because this is a very sensitive issue, subject of discussion and even pending decision by the court. There are at least 26 petitions filed already. So, yun, siguro dapat kinwalify niya yung kanyang statement. Thank you, Senator Drilon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that intervention. Yes, General Parlade, you just said that the regulation will determine what they are allowed to do, meaning those who are users of social media. The regulation will determine what they are allowed to do. Mr. General, this is precisely what prior restraint is all about. When you regulate what one is allowed to do, that's prior restraint and that's prohibited. And Senator Lacson did not intend that. That's why I am a little concerned about your statement. Yes, I can understand fully your support for your chief of staff, but I think, as Senator Lacson said, it should have been qualified. Now, you did not help the position of your chief of staff, Amy, by saying that the regulation will determine what they are allowed to do. I would repeat, this is precisely prior restraint, which is prohibited under our Bill of Rights and under our democratic system of government. You cannot impose prior restraint. Those users of social media who may violate the law would be answerable in terms of sedition, in terms of whatever you have, at violation of the Anti-Terror Act, but you cannot determine what they are allowed to do because there is a process that is involved to punish what they did in social media, not that you will determine what they should be allowed to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I submit to the wisdom of the senator, and I think that's the intention really of the AFP and the chief of staff when we said that we need to do something about. Really, it's about being responsible in what you do and what you say in the social media. And as far as the regulations is concerned, maybe it's up to the drafters of the IR to really look into this. But the idea, Senator Sir, is really to prevent or to make sure that we are able to protect our citizens, especially from terrorism. So I submit to the wisdom of the senator. Really, we don't need to, and we should not suppress freedom of expression. But we have to do something about people who are irresponsible in using or accessing social media. Thank you.
They-
Mr. Chair.
we are
Again-
conscious-
Yes, Senator Drilon, please proceed.
Just point. We can assure you, Mr. General, that the principal author of the law, Senator Lacson, and the entire Senate is conscious of the fact that we must protect our state. But we must protect our state in the manner that is consistent with our Constitution and statements like we have to determine what a citizen is allowed to do in terms of the use of social media is certainly does not have a place in our system of government. Maybe in another form of government that's okay, but not in our system of government. You can punish and support any move to punish those who call for a revolution or a rise or use of language which will call for the separation of the loyalty of the people on the government. But you cannot have a prior restraint because you will be a judge from the very start and say that because of who you are, you are not allowed to say anything. I hope that is clear in your system, Mr. General, and I would like to hear from you. Because my vote for you will be influenced by how you respond to these questions, very disturbing questions, answers you have so far. I must tell you.
General Parlade and the members of the armed forces present here today, including yung chief of staff ninyo, no? Just a piece of advice, when you issue statements, be very careful and be very conscious because pag sinabi mong regulate yung social media, yun ang sinasabi ni Senator Drilon na prior restraint. Papasok tayo dyan sa will be in violation of yung tinatawag na overbreadth doctrine, prior restraint. So you should be very careful. I know that the intention of the Chief of Staff when he issued a statement was not along the line of, imposing restraint on social media or media in general. And that is not the legislative intent of the anti-terror law when we deliberated on it on the floor and when we passed it. So kindly relay that piece of advice to your Chief of Staff. Anyway, he'll be appearing here in due time because I think he has not received his nomination yet, no? He's still a Lieutenant General. But anyway, he will be a better resource person to comment on a statement that he himself issued. So anybody, are you
Mr.
done,
Chair.
Senator Dillon?
But
Because
just one-
before I recognize Senator Po.
On this particular concern, yes. On another area, if there are no more questions on this particular area of concern, I can go to another, just one more, unless there are other of our colleagues who would
Mr.
want.
Chair, this is in line with the question of Senator Drilon.
Senator Po is recognized.
Yes, first I'd like to thank Senator Drilon for raising this point. I would like to ask our candidate, General, just based on common sense, without the IRR yet, what would you consider a terroristic activity on social media? So ano sa tingin nyo yung, sabi nga ninyo, para sa kaligtasan ng ating lahat. So ano ang maituturing ninyong halimbawa ng paggamit ng social media para sa isang terroristic activity?
The example that I raised, ma'am, is this organization trying to disseminate to their members how to make Molotov bombs, how to assemble bombs, where to get all these materials, and then how to assemble them, and even how to use this in some terrorist activities. This is a very a good example of why we are concerned about this. I think that's the worst condition that we have seen so far. But I can also raise some other examples, like inciting young kids to fight their government, to join the armed components of these threat groups, not only with the NPAs, not only with the terrorist groups in Mindanao. So these are clear examples of how they use the social media to to recruit very young members and join this terrorist organizations.
So, sir, just to clarify, what you pointed out is quite clear. On the other hand, let me give you an example and tell me what your response will be. For example, there is a group of individuals airing their grievances about anybody in government. It could be one of us in the Senate, it could be anybody from the executive, and it would say that we should go out and protest. We should call them out. These are their faults, incompetence. How would you deal with that?
It's very clear in our armed forces, ma'am, that these are allowed. In fact, the law allows it. It is very, very clear. It's part of our constitutionally mandated the rights of our citizens, part of their liberties. But it is totally different from asking young kids to join a terrorist organization. Shouting your sentiments against the government is part of the democratic process. But to convince people to join a terrorist organization to fight the government and probably hurt other people, that's the thing that we are concerned of.
Okay, as long as you keep that in mind, General. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Po. Before I recognize Senator Ontiveros, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Joel Villanueva. Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. My follow-up question, my question is actually not a follow-up question to this issue, but a different issue. And so if Senator Frank still has another question, may I just be recognized by the chair to be
Okay.
next in line?
So
Thank
in
you,
that
Mr.
case,
Chair.
I will recognize again Senator Drilon.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question, Mr. Chairman. Can the nominee brief the committee on if he knows exactly where the investigation on the shooting of our 4 members of the armed forces in Hulo is? Where is it today? What is the status? Are our soldiers getting in the process of getting the justice that they are looking for, that the families would like to see?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not privy to the status of the investigation. My area is Bicol, Mimaro, and Central Calabarzon. Probably this can be answered by one of our colleagues from West Bingcom.
Senator Drilon, I will refer you to General Binluan, who is the commander of West Mincom.
Yes, if that is in order, Mr. Chair, I would appreciate it if General Vinluan can answer the
Because
question.
General Parlade is the commander of Solcom, no,
Yes.
Southern Luzon.
Yes, I did not
So-
realize, Mr. Chairman. Yes,
Okay.
sorry. Yes,
General
General Parlade. Yes, General Vinluan. You heard the question. Can you give us a briefing on where we are exactly?
Good morning, Your Honor, Mr. Chair. Based on the hearing we had just last week, according to the NBI, it is still at the office of the DOJ, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, this is?
It is
Absolutely,
still
sir.
at the office of the Department of the Justice, Your Honor.
Yes, procedurally, it is in the Office of the Department of Justice. But have we submitted the evidence as part of our, as complainant, I assume, or as members of the arm, or as high rank as the one on top of this incident? What evidence have we so far presented, just in a general sense? Is it true, for example, that all the soldiers were shot at the back? Totoo ba yun? Nasa likod ang tama ng mga namatay? According to our evidence, yes, General Binluan?
They were shot at the back, Your Honor.
Would our evidence establish the motive why they were shot? They were shot at.
Actually, that's one of the tasks of the NBI to determine the real motive of the killing of 4 soldiers, Your Honor.
In the complaint filed by the NBI, is there any indication what the motive was?
I think none yet, Your Honor.
You know, if I were you, Mr. General, if we care about our soldiers, we better monitor this more closely, because don't tell me this is by accident. They were shot at the back and there is no motive. It's only homicide. Or what? Is it in self-defense? Oh, you mean, my advice to you, General Binduan, is that we should monitor this more closely. If you're saying that there is no established motive at this stage,
Actually, Your Honor, we have
that's a
already,
very difficult situation to accept.
actually, Your Honor, we have already submitted all the evidences, including the witnesses were already presented to the National Bureau of Investigation, Your Honor.
What did you present in terms of the motive of the policemen in, 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 in shooting at our soldiers?
When during the Senate hearing, Your Honor, the Senator De La Rosa told the NBI to dig furthermore about the motive of the policeman, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Mr. General, I'm not talking about the Senate hearing. I'm not talking about the NBI investigation and what evidence the armed forces has presented to give justice to the families of the four soldiers who died shot at the back. I will not accept the proposition that you are not aware of any motive, because that's a very dangerous statement. It means they were shot accidentally. They were shot for behind their backs for with no motive. Because ordinarily, because being shot with at a defenseless position like being at the back is treachery. So what? So there must. So you're saying that you do not know what the motive is, or you have not presented any proof of the motive that prompted these 9 policemen in shooting these our soldiers?
Your Honor, if you may allow, I will tell you the story how it happened.
Yes, please.
Based on the reports of the intel operatives, 2 days from about 2 days will the 2 female suicide bombers will bomb a place somewhere in Hulo. So I asked the intel operatives if they can pinpoint the location of the 2 female suicide bombers who were then monitored in Metro Holo. When the intel operatives told me that they cannot pinpoint it, so I asked them if what will happen if we will announce it. We will expose the plan of the suicide bombers. So when they told me that they cannot pinpoint it, so I decided to compromise our covert operation. So instead, I asked the Metro Holo commander to talk with the policemen in the area, barangay captains, even the mayor, to tell them that there is an impending suicide bombing to be executed in the area. And then that time when the barangay officials have been recommended that we will knock at the doors of the dorm, and then that's what the Metro Holo did. And then the day of the incident, when the late
Jervin
Major
Luan,
Indamog,
Jervin Luan, if I may interrupt, you can speak in Tagalog. Anyway, si Senator Dillon won't mind. Kahit
Yes,
Ilonggo
sir.
yan, marunong mag-Tagalog siya.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, para you can better articulate the what you're saying. Thank you.
And then when we were about to locate the location of the bombers, late Major Indamog informed us that sabi niya, "Sir, mainit na dito, baka pwede kaming bumalik diyan." So, and then bumalik sila doon pabalik na sila to our headquarters, but they were checked by the PNP, the suspected PNP shooters at the first checkpoint. And then dumiretso na sila, nag-usap sila nung pulis, sinabihan na they will meet at the police station. So dumiretso sila sa police station, Your Honor. And then Major Indamog, instead of stopping at the police station, about 50 meters doon sila nag-stop dahil ayaw nila na makompromise yung nasa loob ng sasakyan nila. May equipment doon. Dahil maraming tao doon sa police station, so hindi doon sila tumigil, about 50 meters doon sila tumigil. Then suddenly the policemen sumunod doon sa kina Major Indamog, and then si Major Indamog buwaba. Dahil yun ang SOP ng mga intel units natin, na baba sila if they know that yung nag-check sa kanila is yung marked vehicle, and then naka-uniform, buwaba sila without firearms. And then all of a sudden, doon na sila pinagbabaril, Your Honor.
Did the victims and the policemen charged of this offense knew each other previous to this?
According to the report of RD, they know one of the victims, yung si Corporal Asula. Sabi nga nila sa report nila that he was involved in drug activities. So prior to that, alam na nila na sundalo yung nakasakay doon sa vehicle na yon, Your Honor.
So ang alam nila, isa doon sa apat na nabaril ay ang isang corporal, sinasabi nila, alam nila na involved sa drug activities. Yun po ba ang sinasabi? Assuming na totoo po yun, justified ba na barilin nila itong mga sundalo natin?
Hindi pa rin, Your Honor.
Hindi pa rin. Tama, hindi. Wala namang dapat barilin kung kung kahit na totoong involved ka sa drug activities, hindi mo dapat naman barilin. But anyway, ito'y hindi naman totoo, hindi ba? Tama po ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hindi totoo na involved sa drug activities.
Hindi involved, Your Honor. Actually, nung nalaman namin na ganun nga ang istorya ng pulis, we dig deeper. So wala nga, yung sundalo na yon, siya yung matino at marami siyang na-contribute sa security, hindi lang sa Hulo part hanggang sa Basilan, Your Honor.
So, talagang walang dahilan kung bakit sila binaril. In fact, binaril sila nakatalikod, walang armas, defenseless. Hindi ba? Sa inyong
Yes,
investigation, tama po ba yan?
Tama, Your Honor.
Now, so alam mo, dahilan sa wala naman tayong maituro na motibo, hindi naman walang absolutely no motive. Sinabi mo nga, walang motibo. Posible kaya na may conspiracy dito between those who our intelligence officers were trying to arrest, the terrorist bombers, and the members of the police station who shot them. Mayroong kasing usapan sa labas na kaya binaril ito dahilan sa kasabwat. Yun naman usapan, hindi ko sinasabing totoo. Ay itong mga kasama doon sa mga hinahanap ng ating mga intelligence officers.
Isa yan sa nakikita namin na motibo, Your Honor.
Isa yan sa nakikita niyong motibo. At how did you come at that motive, at that conclusion, Mr. General?
Pwedeng pakiulit, Your Honor.
Paano niyo naman nasabi na isa sa motibo na nakikita ay magkasabwat yung pulis sa Hulo? Kung hindi ako nagkakamali, at yung mga hinahunting at hinahanap ng ating 4 intelligence operatives.
Posible yon, Your Honor, dahil halos magkakamag-anak naman sa Sulu. May mga ASG na may kamag-anak na pulis, and then may uminilip naman na kamag-anak yung pulis dahil malit lang naman yung sulo, Your Honor.
At sino naman itong inyong nakikitang kamag-anak ng ASG doon sa mga siyam na miyembro ng PNP?
Hindi ko pa kayo masagot ng definite, Your Honor, dahil ongoing pa yung investigation namin, Your Honor.
Oh, doon so wala doon sa final ng NBI, wala doon sa mga pieces of evidence noong na final ng NBI sa DOJ. Wala doon.
Wala, Your Honor.
Okay. Ngayon, maliban doon sa inyong theory na may conspiracy, yung ASG personnel at saka policemen sa Hulo police station, mayroon mo bang ibang kayong nakikita ang dahilan kung bakit sila binaril?
Ang nakikita naming dahilan, Your Honor, dahil yung mga bumaril sa mga sundalo natin ay are members of Drug Enforcement Unit of the PNP. And then coincidentally na yung barangay na minomonitor ng ating intelligence officers ay doon nakatira yung about 1 or 2 policemen, Your Honor.
So, ibig sabihin, isa rin sa mga motibo na drug protectors itong mga pulis.
Posible, Your Honor.
Okay, so maliban doon, mayroon pa bang iba? Drug protection, drug protector, kasabwat doon sa ASG activities, yung protection na nila. Maliban doon, wala na siguro, mayroon pa.
Wala na, Your Honor.
Wala na kayong tinitingnan na ibang anggulo.
Siguro yung Rido, Your Honor, yung dahil according to our report na yung 2 relatives of Corporal Asula were killed by the PNP. So they are expecting na yung sundalo siguro natin na they are nagkakandak sila ng surveillance against the personnel of this unit, Your Honor.
Totoo ba yun? Is that true?
Gusto kasi yung Rido sa Sulo, Your Honor.
Okay, having asked all of these questions, do you have a plan or a program so that this dastardly act would no longer be repeated? Meron mo kayong naiisip na paraan para hindi na po maulit itong ganitong klaseng pamamaslang na kawawa naman yung pamilya ng ating mga sundalo?
We are intensifying our coordination with the PNP. So lahat ng operations namin dapat magkaroon ng detailed na coordination with them, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll not ask. That should be end. I just want to leave with you a message, General, that pay more attention to basic questions and basic facts that I have asked. Because as a former Secretary of Justice, I know that the prosecutor will be looking for this kind of evidence before they can file a case in court. Because if they file a case and they could not prove what they're alleging, sayang lang. The prosecutor will be relying on the investigation done by the NBI and the AFP. And from what I have heard, I'm sorry to say, Mr. General, that you do not have yet sufficient evidence to convict this policeman. You're not even certain about the motive, why they were shot. All that we know is that they were shot at the back. which qualifies it as treachery because they were unarmed, as you said. And therefore, this is a very serious offense. I would advise you that you should exert more effort. You should look at the matter more closely, supervise the investigators more intently. As if Senator Lacson were still in the PNP, I'm sure that he can unearth all of these facts. But that's my advice to you, Mr. General. This is a very serious affront to our armed forces when are you saying that the motive is either the relationship with the ASG, which is or the drug connection, or RIDO. One of them, one of the four, are being involved in a RIDO, and three others are shot. So that's as I said, maybe you should exercise due diligence and stricter monitoring. And give it your personal attention because sundalo natin ito, buhay ang nawala. At hindi naman ito sa enkwentro kung hindi nakatalikod pa ang mga sundalo natin. Kailangan naman konting tutok, ika nga, para po magkaroon ng hustisya ang ating mga kasamahan sa armed forces. Marami pong salamat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. General Binluan, as a former member of both the Armed Forces of the Philippines for 20 years, from 1971 to 1991, and the PNP for 10 years, from 1991, upon the passage of the PNP law, to 2001, when I won my seat here in the Senate. I would just like to state that I sincerely hope that whatever animosity was created by that incident, unfortunate incident, will be limited under your area of jurisdiction and to that particular incident, and would not drive any wedge between the PNP and the armed forces as institutions. So yun lang masasabi ko. And I do hope that your efforts should follow that line. Thank you. Any other?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Ontiveros?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for the Armed Forces of the Philippines, so the highest ranking official present, so General Parlade again, please, Mr. Chair.
Chair Parlade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General Parlade. General, it was recently reported that a certain group is lobbying for a so-called revolutionary government to bring about so-called genuine reform. The group said in a letter that it will appeal to the president to head the revolutionary government under a so-called revolutionary constitution that will last until December 31 next year. As we all know, one of the effects of initiating a revolutionary government would be to overthrow the present constitution. So what is your stand, General, about this so-called clamor for revolutionary government, considering that one of the sworn duties of the members of the armed forces is to uphold and defend the Constitution and to bear true faith and allegiance to it?
Mr. Chair, I'm not very familiar with that group, but I don't believe in a revolutionary government. We have existing mechanisms. We have a constitution that's very robust. Maybe we need some reforms. There are provisions in the constitution probably that's already obsolete. Maybe that's one of the things that we should look at. I guess this group are only dissatisfied with our with the slow pace that we are dealing with these reforms because of some constitutional constraints. So I still believe that we need to support and we need to we need to support reforms in the government, and this can be done through legislation.
I'm very glad to hear your responses, General, especially since you are the highest ranking military official here before us today. And therefore, I doubly appreciate your stand that you don't believe in the cause of this group, that despite, like for any constitution, despite possible areas for amendment or improvement, that you see our 1987 Constitution as a robust one, and in fact a space for reforms to be undertaken, not only by legislators like us here, pero yung ating mga mamamayan sa pamamagitan ng kanilang partisipasyon. And speaking of whom, even more than this group, probably marami sa mga mamamayan ang mas dissatisfied pa o mas naghahanap pa ng mga reformang ito at saka improvement sa ating governance. But in any case, General, in the, I think, highly improbable scenario that a so-called revolutionary government, whatever that means, is declared, how do you think our armed forces should respond?
I believe, Mr. Chair, Madam, we have to go back to the Constitution and determine whether these actions are allowed by the Constitution. So our actions will be all limited to what's in that Constitution.
Thank you, General. Indeed, our actions should be limited by the Constitution and also empowered by the Constitution. Dahil gaya ng sinabi niyo, robust na Constitution ito, ibig sabihin, sa kabila nung anumang imperfections niya, tulad ng lahat siguro ng mga konstitusyon sa buong mundo, it does empower our government, including our armed forces, at yung mga mamamayan to respond to what I think are what would be an illegal act, such as this declaration of a so-called revolutionary government. At kasi sa tingin ko rin po, Mr. Chair, hindi dapat talagang seryosohin ang panawagan para sa so-called revolutionary government. Para itong isang actually malaking offensive joke na sa gitna ng pagkawala ng milyon-milyong trabaho, pagkagutom ng marami at daan-libo ng COVID-19 cases, ay may lumulutang pa na magdeklara ng so-called RevGov. I'm glad government dismissed this call and that our armed forces, again this morning, have expressed that it stands by the Constitution. Pero ito ba'y ginagawang distraction ng grupong iyan mula sa totoong krisis na kinakaharap natin? At wala naman totoong public clamor para dito dahil ang pinakakailangan ngayon ng taong bayan, dahil nang nabanggit ko kanina, Mr. Chair and General, ay maayos na healthcare at trabaho. Hindi so-called RevGov ang sagot dito. Good governance ang sagot dito, na yun ang iniuutos ng ating konstitusyon. To another question, General, Mr. Chair. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague unanimously ruled in favor of the Philippines and decided that we have exclusive sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea. However, despite this favorable ruling, China continues to advance its claims in the whole of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea. For example, in March of this year, she built 2 research stations on Fiery Cross, our Kagitingan, and on Subi Reefs in Spratly Islands. According to their Ministry of Civil Affairs, China's State Council also approved the establishment of the Paracel, or their Shisha, and Spratly, or their Nansha, in the West Philippine Sea as districts under Sansha City. And since the start of the year, more than 130 Chinese fishing vessels have been monitored near the Philippines-occupied Pag-asa Island, West Philippine Sea. So undeniably, these activities are prejudicial to the rights of our Filipino fisherfolk to have access to the country's exclusive economic zone. As the armed forces of the Philippines is mandated to uphold the sovereignty of the country over our territory, what capabilities do our armed forces need, particularly the Navy and the Air Force? So in addition, Mr. Chair, to General Parlade, perhaps the committee could hear from General Arevalo. What capabilities do our armed forces need to safeguard Philippine interests and maintain a credible defensive posture in the West Philippine Sea?
Mr. Chair, do I start with the answer or I'll
Yes,
ask
please, General Parlade, if you wish, and then we would appreciate also General Arevalo.
I'll start with the with why these Chinese are here. I'll start with what I know, what happened. We are now talking of the arbitral tribunal, and this was in 2016. But what we are not talking about is what happened before 2016. Your armed forces reported all this reclamation that we've been seeing as early as 2013. And then 2014, all these developments, as they increased their reclamation, all of these were documented by your armed forces. But nobody took action about that. The DFA, even the Office of the President did not take action. Even the National Security Council did not take action on this until such time that they were able to completely establish military bases in this West Philippine Sea, and until there's this ruling from arbitral tribunal. So, Madam, my answer to your question, what do we need? It's really political will. It's really political will. Because if at the start we did something to tell China to stop that reclamation, and remember this was 2013, then probably we could have nipped on the bud this attempt by the Chinese to reclaim. As the military is an extension of politics, we would abide with whatever the president, our commander in chief, would tell us. And currently, the policy is to make sure that there's peaceful. I don't want to say coexistence, but maintain peace and stability. But of course, we are not saying that we are foregoing with this ruling of the arbitral tribunal. In fact, our DFA, I think, until now, is still invoking on this ruling. So right now, if you're asking us about capability, the first capability that we need are really the wherewithal to send this message that this government is serious about protecting its rights. And it doesn't matter if we only have a few floating vessels. It doesn't matter if we only have a few fighter jets. As long as we are clear and we are unequivocal about this position, then I guess the message would be very, very clear to other governments, not only China, but the other states who have interest in West Philippine Sea. As far as the other capabilities is concerned, probably I'll ask General Arevalo to share some inputs. But let me just say that it's not really about capabilities. It's our resolve. It's our political resolve, our political will to make sure that those interests, those core interests are protected. And that's, I think, the most important thing that the international community should understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I agree, General. And before, yes, Mr. Chair, before General Parlade leaves his seat, I agree with the good general that what we need is an unequivocal taking of stand of our country led by the government on our national interest, as most undermined, in some moments betrayed by the so-called peaceful coexistence being advanced now. Because nobody is calling for war. For sure, we want peaceful coexistence with all the claimant countries in the whole South China Sea, including with China herself. But it seems like what has been happening the past few years is snatching defeat from the jaws victory. I agree with the good general. In addition to the wherewithal, even more important, more decisive is our political resolve. What he said, our political will. And may I remind the good general, as we all remember, that political will was most strikingly demonstrated by the filing of the case at The Hague in the first place and the winning of the decision in 2016. But based on the case building, the representation made by government, and in fact under the previous administration at the Hague, which has won us this unprecedented political and diplomatic victory, and which for sure we here in the Senate want to enable our armed forces to continue to stand on and to hold in every peaceful means, political and diplomatic means in the West Philippine Sea. So thank you, General Parlade. And yes, please, if we could have some inputs also from General Arevalo, since he hails from the Philippine Marines, also the branch of service of my brother.
General Parade, you're momentarily excused. Yes, General Arevalo, kindly occupy the seat in front.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am Major General Edgar Arevalo, the current commander of the AFP Education Training Doctrine Command, and also the concurrent spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. With regard to the question, we have distributed horizons until 2022,
Yes, General.
be our second horizon. For our Air Force, definitely we'll be needing additional aircraft that would be able to capacitate the Air Force to do its aerial patrols in our territories. With regard to the Philippine Navy and our need for more patrol craft to be able to conduct regular maritime sovereignty patrols in our territory. And also we have the so-called littoral monitoring stations for us to augment our capability to look over our borders regularly if and when, for example, weather does not permit or allow our aircraft or our vessels to do the regular maritime and aerial domain patrols that we do, Madam.
Thank you, General Arevalo. Maybe you'd like to take first crack at my next question, and then again, I would appreciate hearing from General Parlade. General, what strategic concepts do you think our armed forces should implement in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, we will be needing a joint patrols with our Army. Oh, sorry.
General, nag-mute po kayo. Yes, sir, you were saying that we need joint patrols.
Can you hear me now, Madam?
I can hear you now, sir.
Yeah. Strategically, we already have established how we could coordinate. I mean, the Air Force and the Navy could coordinate with regard to our regular maritime domain awareness patrols. And we have also established links with our counterparts, especially in Indonesia and Malaysia, for our joint border patrols that we do regularly. We conduct regular conferences and meetings to exchange notes between and amongst this unit in order to ensure that we'll be able to have a robust coordination and maintaining our liaison with these branches of service from other countries.
Thank you, General Arevalo. Mr. Chair, perhaps we could hear again from General Parlade if he would like to add to this discussion about the strategic concepts the armed forces should implement in the West Philippine Sea.
Thank you. Your excuse, General Arevalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Madam Senator, if I may add,
Please, General.
when we talk of strategic concepts or framework, I guess this is not only limited to your armed forces. I'd rather that we have the Department of Foreign Affairs, we have the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the Department of Transportation through the Coast Guard, and the other entities of the government. That's important in the protection of our maritime interests. In fact, In fact, near West Philippine Sea, we have two very important choke points, the Balabac Strait and the Mindoro Strait. These are very, very important choke points in our maritime area. Two of the busiest among the 7 choke points in the country. But right now, we don't have we don't have a framework that would really integrate the efforts of Foreign Affairs, DNR, Coast Guard, and as well as the Department of National Defense in making sure that these busy straits are well guarded. We've been discussing this in the regional development councils of Mimaropa. We've been saying that it's important that Balabac Strait should be watched carefully because this is one important passageway that actually guards the back door of the country. And as well with Mindoro Strait. In Mindoro Strait, there are around 47,000 international vessels passing this strait every year. And just recently, we had a disaster there, and it was very difficult for your security sector and even the Coast Guard to react to this tragedy because they're elsewhere. The Coast Guard came from Batangas, and the other assets came from Palawan, and it's so difficult to address this very important strait. So what we're saying is the security and safety and the defense of this area should not be only left to the devices of the armed forces. It should include the Foreign Affairs, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Transportation, including PDEA, including yes, DFA through immigration and other agencies. So I think, Madam, it's important really that we discuss this issue and discuss it with geopolitical situation at the back of our heads. It's not only a domestic problem. We are all well entrenched in this region, and I think General Arevalo already mentioned an interstate uh, and multiple state action as far as protecting this region is concerned.
I agree, General. It's very interesting you should mention na wala pa po tayong strategic framework that is interagency to protect our national interests in the West Philippine Sea. And at least the Senate counterpart of this committee would be very interested to be constantly updated about this, since the Senate is the treaty-making body of our republic, and such strategic frameworks would also fall within our area of interest. At importante pong tinukoy nyo yung vulnerability natin both on the Mindoro side and the Palawan side vis-a-vis the West Philippine Sea. At dahil itong dalawang lalawigan natin ay nag-account na for at least two of the recent incidents ng aggression ng Chinese vessels against our Filipino fisherfolk and fishing vessels. Just a last question, General Parlade, on the Permanent Court of Arbitration decision. A related question, no? What is your opinion of freedom of navigation operations in disputed waters? How else do you think we can contest excessive claims of other coastal states?
I'm not very familiar with the maritime laws, Madam, but as far as I remember, these could be contested seas, but international protocols allow nations to pass through these, especially if these are designated as archipelagic sea lanes. So yes, I support that idea that these seas should be open for all. But I also support the efforts to determine or to establish archipelagic sea lanes in the country so that we will be able to designate specific lanes where international vessels could pass. As of now, they can pass anywhere in our country, especially because we don't have the capability to monitor And we can only challenge them, but if they don't respond, we can't actually do anything. Ma'am, I just want to add that it's important that we discuss West Philippine Sea in a broader frame because we are missing so much. For instance, in West Philippine Sea alone, and I'm not talking about that contested area, I'm talking about Cagayan up to Zambales. The UP Maritime Institute have identified or did a research and they're saying that we are losing $79 billion in terms of fish potential. We're not even talking about hydrocarbons here or fossil fuels. We are losing 79 billion worth of fish in that area alone. Hanggang Scarborough lang yan, ma'am. That is because we don't have maritime or fishery policies. We don't have enough security elements to protect our fishermen as against the other countries. For instance, Vietnam, they have a maritime strategy 2020, which allow their fishermen to be given subsidy by the government, providing them with funds to upgrade their fishing vessels, maritime instruments, so that they will be able to convert or contribute to their GDP to around their target is around 54% of their maritime or their GDP should be coming from their maritime economy. So right now, after only around 7 years, right now I think they're already at that 47% mark. So these countries are supported by these fishermen, are supported by their government, but ours is I don't know. I think we also have support to our fishermen, but it's not as it's not enough. So what I'm saying is, we strengthen your armed forces, we strengthen our Coast Guard, and by that we are able to protect our fishermen, and then we support our fishermen, supplement them or subsidize them, so that they will be able to harness the 79 billion worth of fish annually. That's what we're missing in West Philippine Sea because we don't have a strategic framework to follow here. Thank you, ma'am.
I agree, General. At kaya siguro kasama dapat sa magbubuo at magpapatupad ng strategic framework na yon, bukod sa mga ahensyang binanggit nyo na, ay yung Department of Agriculture din. At yung may advocacy pa nga yung mga mangingisda natin para sa isang Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. Na siguro kapag tulad nga sa Vietnam, mas naprotektahan yung ating mga mangingisda sa West Philippine Sea, yung DOFAR na yon, kung mabubuo siya, ang magiging ka-coordinate din ng Coast Guard para sa proteksyong iyon. And because we see the very strong support of the Coast Guards of other countries to their fisher folk. At sa lahat naman ito, wag na tayong maging mahiyain. Ang China talaga yung pinaka hamon sa atin at sa mga mangingisda natin in terms of exercising the right to fish Philippine waters. To my next question, General Parlade, on February 11, 2020, Philippine government officially notified the United States of America that it would be terminating the Visiting Forces Agreement. However, in June 2020, the Philippines reinstated the Visiting Forces Agreement with the US. According to a diplomatic letter sent to Washington by DFA Secretary Locsin, the decision to revive the deal was made, quote, in light of political and other developments in the region, close quote. So, General, how did the attempt to terminate the VFA affect the military?
I guess there's a positive and a negative impact for this termination of the BFA. One of the positive impact of this is that without the BFA, our armed forces and our Defense Department will now be able to plan properly how to develop our defense with the absence of a foreign entity that has been supporting us ever since. I guess one of the reasons why our armed forces has not developed or has not modernized is because of the de facto presence of the U.S. Armed Forces, and this BFA is one of those instruments that they can actually support us in our territorial defense needs. Now, without the BFA, we are forced to plan for our future. So that's part of being independent from international support, which is good. But the negative impact of that is probably this time we would be needing support that we used to give to other agencies, as we've been doing. I know that we have a modernization law in 1995, but even with the conversion of these bases, BCDA bases, most of these funds were given to health, to education, which is okay with us. But now we realize how much capability we've missed because our focus was not really on defense. So what I'm saying now is that I guess it's all up to the Senate whether, because in the first place you were the ones who ratified this BFA, but there are good and bad effects of this BFA. Thank you.
Thank you, General. And siguro namalaya nyo naman na pumalag din ang Senado nung unilaterally, well, of course, the President ratifies or signifies this termination, but ang posisyon namin dito sa Senate counterpart dito sa komite ay it requires Senate a confirmation either way. I appreciate yung perspective nyo na it would push us to plan properly given the modernization law as well and other laws that may be passed, plus yung annual na budgets na ipinapasa. Pero kanina you were talking about military action as an extension of diplomacy by other means and vice versa. Meron din namang mga pagtingin sa foreign relations na hindi lang pagputol ng relasyon sa isa, pagbukas ng relasyon sa isa, pero baka some kind of interdependent foreign policy. Kaya nakakaano din na, okay, nagputol na daw sa US, pero eto naman masyadong pumapabor sa China. And what about, enhancing our ASEAN relationships, and then the other new relationships being proposed sa region natin, including by other great powers, both yung former colonizer natin, pero yung iba ring mga powers dito sa region, pati yung mga nag-exercise ng freedom of navigation operations. In any case, General Parlade, what adjustments did the AFP undertake when the VFA was on the brink of being ended? Adjustments po in terms of complex naval exercises. So you may ask General Arevalo if he wants to add to that. But adjustments in terms of complex naval exercises and other activities, such as those particularly for counterterrorism and security cooperation.
I'll give you a few insights on this, but I was already in Solcom when that action was taken by the government. But one of the aspects in the military, one of the sectors that probably suffered, I'm not saying heavily, was the training. So you mentioned about naval exercises. Yes, that portion of that was temporarily shelved. We also have to suspend some of the multilateral and bilateral trainings we have with the U.S. I don't know anymore if there are other aspects of our maybe General Arevalo Ma'am can share to us what else was affected with that termination or with that plan to terminate the BFA. But so far, that's the two things that I can only remember, and this is all about exercises and trainings.
Thank you, General. Maybe, Mr. Chair, we could just ask General Arevalo to submit to the committee his additional inputs for the enlightenment of the committee. I've just been passed a note, General Parlade, that we are running into lack of time. So I wanted to ask you several more questions. Perhaps I'll just end with one. These are actually a cluster of questions. So just for your information, General, and then I would appreciate what comments you can make on any or all of them. I was going to ask you about the case, what you can say about the case lodged against you reportedly by Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate before the Office of the Ombudsman on June 9, 2020, seeking for your preventive suspension and eventual dismissal. It was alleged in the complaint that you violated Section 3E of Republic Act 3019, particularly causing any undue injury to any party, and that you committed a prohibited act under Section 55 of the Administrative Code of 1987, which states no officer or employee in the civil service, including members of the armed forces, shall engage directly or indirectly um, in any partisan political activity. Additionally, on May 13, 2020, the University of the Philippines College of Mass Communications complained about efforts to red tag its students, quote, at a time when all government agencies should be focused on fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, close quote. And if any wanted the National Task Force on to end local communist armed conflict and the good general himself, yourself, to be held accountable. This was triggered by the active involvement of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines and other CMC-based student organizations in the campaign to renew ABS-CBN's franchise. So here I recall the good general's earlier statement that the armed forces upholds press freedom. However, I also note that the general reportedly denied identifying the UPCMC as a communist front organization. But this is not the first time, General, that military persons have allegedly been involved in attacking civilian groups and journalists. And I most notably, I recall that sometime in 2017, the armed forces itself, through then Chief of Staff Eduardo Año, publicly apologized to Ms. Maria Ressa for the irresponsible posting of fake news, comments, and unkind remarks by some members of the AFP. Then Colonel Edgar Arevalo, Chief of the AFP Public Affairs Office, said that the Provost Marshal was ordered, in fact, to investigate the matter. So, General Parlade, as regards the red tagging, did you actually make such accusations? Do members of the AFP have the right to use Facebook or Twitter to voice out their opinion on civilian conduct? And thus, linking journalists, again, related to our earlier discussion on the AFP upholding press freedom, thus linking journalists and known political leaders to the communist underground, which endangers them. Doesn't it violate military rules, for example, on the conduct of officers and gentlemen, General?
General Perlade, kindly make your answers brief. We're running out of time. Please
Yes, Mr.
go
Chair.
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know how I will be able to answer all those questions, but in general, Madam Chair, Madam Senator, let me just say that your armed forces should be political, but non-partisan. We should be non-partisan. So what I'm saying is we should understand the political dynamic so that you will be able to engage this. We engage in a healthy political discourse. So I think everyone should understand that we've been, after 52 years at this point, we should understand how the Communist Party of the Philippines has been playing dual tactics in order to destroy our institutions, including legislative, including other institutions, judicial, and especially the executive. Briefly, let me just say, Mr. Chair, that it's the duty of your armed forces to inform the people about the activities of these organizations. It's now time for us to speak up, especially now that there's an anti-terror act that defines the activities of terrorists from activists. Activism per se is welcome. We want that in a robust democratic country like us, but to be violent in such a way that you will be hurting other people and you will destroy your country is a different matter. So if the question is, did I red tag these people? No, it was Jose Maria Sison. You can see all these organizations in the Revolutionary Web Central. You can check the International League of People Struggle and all these organizations, Bayan, Bayan Muna, Anak Pawis, all these organizations are there. And their chair is Jose Maria Sison, now Len Cooper. What we're saying is that we're getting all this information from them. We are getting this information about their their participation in terrorist activities from their colleagues who are now working with us, former rebels, former cadres, and even top officials of the Communist Party of the Philippines. They are the ones informing us of their participation, specific participations of these individuals as far as terrorism is concerned. So we are confident when we say that this is a terrorist individual. He is part of a terrorist organization. And we are also confident in saying, no, he is just a member of Anak Bayan and he doesn't know anything about this Kabataang Makabayan, which is the underground mass organization of the CPP hiding under Anak Bayan. Just an example. In short, at this point, we should understand what are these organizations which are called above ground, and what are these organizations that's part of the underground. And for us to educate our people, we need to talk. We need to talk and we need to tell them about this information. And this is not destruction. This is not destroying their name. This is not destroying their organization. It's just like saying, in this room, be careful of that guy because he's a thief. And we have proof that he's been stealing things. So same thing, madam. Be careful of this individual because he's part of a terrorist organization and we have proof that he's been part of that. So yun po. Maraming salamat.
Salamat din po, General. Salamat, Chair. In the interest of time, just this last word that some of the organizations given us examples, though I have my own long-standing serious political differences and debates with them, the last time I checked, they were still recognized as legal and above-ground organizations, and they are not here in our hearing in order to speak for themselves. And very lastly, I agree that individual members of the armed forces as Filipino citizens have the right to their own political beliefs. But the AFP as an institution cannot be political in the same sense as civilians, because the Constitution gives our kababayan in the armed forces and the national police the exclusive right to bear arms in defense of the country and of the government. So members of the armed forces have the right to their personal political beliefs, but the armed forces as an institution must not be political. And certainly in that point, I agree with the General, must not be partisan, because it must at all times bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution and uphold all constitutional processes regarding the citizenry and the government. So thank you, General, at maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senator Tolentino is recognized.
Mr. Chair, can I ask some questions directed to General Edgardo de Leon?
General De Leon, please come to the front.
Mr. Chair, General De Leon, this will be just some friendly questions, light banter, and probably more on word plays, General. It's nothing to do with the serious topics that we've been through for the last several hours. General De Leon, alam ko pong hindi na dapat ma-question ang inyong katapatan, loyalty, at pagmamahal sa bayan. Maging ang iyong tatay ay miyembro dati ng Philippine Constabulary. Tama po ba ako?
Integrated National Police po, Your Honor.
INP. Nakalimutan kong batiin ka, Making Buntag. Tiga Cagayan de Oro ka?
Taga Nueva Ecija po, Your
Nueva Ecija.
Honor. At,
Na-assign sa Cagayan de Oro.
na-assign po sa Cagayan de Oro.
General De Leon, Mr. Chair, I consider this batch of appointees, including the nominee, one of the best batches that face this honorable commission. Lalong-lalo na sa dami ng naririto na sa kanilang background. It just so happened that we don't have a Navy officer present here, but I understand General De Leon coming from Class 88 as to Mistas. Tama ba ako doon? Si Admiral Enriquez and Admiral Bordado, am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hindi kita tatanungin sa West Philippine Sea. Sabi ko nga, light lang itong tanong ko. Pero nakita ko yung background mo, isa ka sa pinakamagaling na nabasa kong background because nag-military attaché ka sa Myanmar, nag-aral ka sa US Army Signal Corps School, tama po ba 'yon?
Yes, Your Honor.
At ikaw lang ang nakita kong sa Army rin ako, General. Baka mas senior ako sa iyo. Ikaw lang ang nakita ko na may background na fluent sa Mandarin.
Not much fluent, Your Honor, because I can speak conversational because my mother is pure Chinese, Your Honor.
And you can understand Chinese, you can speak Chinese. So sa nakikita ko sa takbo ng karera mo sa Sandatahan Lakas sa Army, pwede ka pang malipat buhat sa CMO bilang Deputy Chief sa isang posisyon na babagay, angkop sa iyong background, lalong-lalo na sa pagiging well-versed mo sa Chinese language. Saan kaya yon, General? Saan po pwede yon? Na hindi lang CMO, dito lang tayo sa Pilipinas yon. Saan magagamit yung kaalaman mo sa lingwahe ng China na angkop sa iyong background? Saan kaya yon? Baka nakikinig si General Gapay o ano?
Your Honor, I'm previously the Deputy Chief of Staff for Civil Military Operations, but now, sir, since May until this date, I'm now the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations of the AFP, sir. I don't know if the Honorable Senator would remember, sir. When I was still a second lieutenant, I paid a courtesy call on Mayor Tolentino of
Okay.
Tagaytay. When I was still
Hindi kita
operating
namumukhaan kasi nakamask ka eh.
in, yes, sir. When I was still operating as platoon leader in Magallanes, Cavite
Okay.
area, sir.
Ako
So,
na. Tayo sa Magallanes. Meron may tropa tayo sa Magallanes doon,
opo,
ano?
nung kayo po ay mayor ng Tagaytay City.
Oo, matagal-tagal na yon.
Opo.
Kaya ako nabanggit, Mr. Chairman, na isa sa pinakamagaling na batches itong kaharap natin, hindi dahil po merong dalawang General Tolentino na mako-confirm, si General Rowan Tolentino at General Norwin Romeo Tolentino. Hindi naman siguro anak to ni Army Chief dati, Romy Tolentino. So, mabalik ako dun sa background mo, General. I will never question your loyalty, your patriotism. Wala yon. Light banter lang ito. Pero napasadahan ko, nakita ko yung iyong social media page na iniiwas kita ngayon sa pag na-confirm ka, baka merong konting, alam mo yung mga bash, pangkaraniwan lang yon. Yung iyong social media page, ang nakalagay ay and I heard that you mentioned your heritage, your mother, halos lahat ng Pilipino may Chinese blood, including Dr. Jose Rizal. Parang yung barko natin, BRP Jose Rizal, nasa Pearl Harbor ngayon, nagte-testing, di ba? Habang, for the record, merong movement sa South China Sea. So, nakita ko social media page mo, General Yao Xingli. Your Chinese name, perhaps. Lahat naman may Chinese name. Nung araw, pumunta ka sa bangketa ng Hong Kong, bibigyan ka ng uukit-ukitin pa yun, hulaan ka doon, bibigyan ka na rin ng Chinese name. You're proud of your heritage, your lineage. Is it correct na yun ang nakalagay?
I grew up in the Filipino-Chinese community, Your Honor. And I studied from elementary until high school in a Filipino-Chinese school in Caloocan City. And I'm a member of the alumni association of that school. And in that school, I have my Filipino name and my Chinese name. And that Chinese name was given to me by my grandfather, the father of my mother. So that Yao surname that I'm using in the Chinese name is the surname of my mother, not the surname of my father. My father is a pure Filipino, and my mother is a naturalized Filipina.
Wala tayong question dyan. General. Yun nga, yung Shengli, tama ba ako? Sa Chinese ang ibig sabihin niyan, victory. Sa English?
Opo.
So,
Sa
General Victory ka. Mako-confirm ka, victorious ka talaga doon. So, kaya ako lang nabanggit ito kasi nakalagay doon sa social media page mo yung General Yao Xingli. Wala tayong question doon. Alam mo, General, kahit sabihin nung pag may nag-bash sa'yo na sabihin, why is there a Chinese general in the Philippine Army? Ako pa yung magdidepensa sa'yo. Sasabihin ko sa kanila, there is a Filipino general in the People's Liberation Army, in the PLA. Kaya sabi ko sa'yo, light banter lang ito eh. So, continue your good works, General De Leon, and I hope General Gapay is listening that probably in the days ahead, you will be given a position very appropriate to your background. You will be able to utilize your background in fluency in Chinese language, Mandarin, as a bridge, perhaps to sort some miscommunications, or perhaps be a tool for diplomatic advancement as we go along in this maze of diplomatic conundrum we are in right now. Congratulations, General. Sabi ko, light banter lang yon. I am here to give some friendly remarks. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
Tolentino.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Are there any other inquiries on the other nominee, on the other appointees from the members of the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I submitted in the chat very quick questions lang po.
Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to ask a question of our nominee for Major General, AFP, presently the Chief of Staff of the Philippine Army, General Tolentino, please. Rowan Tolentino, being that there are two Tolentinos.
Okay. Please proceed, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you very much, General. I would simply like to ask you, has anyone approached you or any other military officer that you know regarding the RevGov, the so-called revolutionary government?
So far, ma'am, wala pa po.
Sa pagkaalam ba ninyo, meron ba kayong naririnig tungkol sa ugong-ugong at napakainit na balita tungkol sa RevGov?
In my conversation with other officers from the Philippine Army, ma'am, so far they haven't spoken to us about this RevGov. We just actually heard that in the news. But
Pareho tayo. Kaya sa palagay mo, bakit ang init-init ng balitang to?
honestly, ma'am, we don't have any idea why this news is coming out. But as what was spoken by General Parlade a while ago, we are following the duly constituted authorities, and this RevGov has no place in the armed forces.
At sa pagkaalam mo, wala nang ibang units pa na rine-recruit, yung usual, Southcom at kung sino-sino pa.
Wala pa po, ma'am. Wala pa po. Wala pa kaming nadidinig na gano'n.
Okay, at sa pagkaalam mo rin, clear violation ito ng 1987 Constitution at pwedeng hatulan ng sedition kapag nangyari ito. Tama po ba?
Opo, ma'am. May military law po tayo na hindi po pinapayagan yung mga ganyang pagsali sa mga organization that is not constitutionally legal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to put on record that the AFP is firmly against the RevGov and that to date, no such recruitment is ongoing despite the media attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Marcos. Any other from other members?
Wala na.
Mr.
Majority
Chair.
Leader?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Ontiveros.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one last follow-up question to General Parlade.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General, in the same way that Senator Drilon earlier asked you a question on which he said his vote would depend. May I also make one final follow-up question? Meron po kasing bahagi, importanteng bahagi nung huling tanong ko sa inyo na hindi nyo nasagot. Because, sir, just to be explicit, the last time I checked, Rappler is also not a terrorist organization. So doesn't linking journalists like those who make up Rappler or red tagging them to the communist underground endanger them and violate military rules?
Madam Chair, Madam Senator, are you asking me if we cited specific personalities in the media to be members of, especially Rappler?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I mean, General and Mr. Chair, because I have articles here about such red tagging insinuations against Rappler and individuals connected to Rappler. And nakakabahala po talaga dahil kontra sa sinabi ng General kanina na the armed forces upholds press freedom. And Rappler, although assailed now by many cases, which I think are in the nature of persecution, are not a terrorist organization, is not a terrorist organization, and is simply exercising the freedom of the press, their duty as the fourth estate, which the general at the beginning of the hearing said that in fact the armed forces upholds.
That's true. We uphold press freedom, and I can vehemently deny that I've identified RESA as a terrorist organization or any, even Rappler. I just said in my previous statements that the Rappler issue is not is beyond us. It's a it's a it's a it's a franchise issue, just like the ABS-CBN. And they are
Yes,
just
General.
trying to exploit. They're just trying to exploit this issue to destroy the government. As far as I remember, that's what I said. I did not tag anyone as a communist. Yes, I did not tag specifically any individual as a communist unless I am very certain. The rest of them, I tag because I am very sure. But as far as Reza is concerned, I'm sorry ma'am, wala akong sinabing ganun.
Yes, General, I'm not talking about the cases filed in court either, but the red tagging, for example, of individuals related to Rappler. Another example I could give would be Glenda Gloria as a journalist.
Ma'am, I never said that Glenda Gloria is a communist, but I was just saying that her line is way off. Her line is way off. Her comments cannot be accepted by the armed forces, especially saying that in the past, the armed forces of the Philippines has been dealing with the combatants. That's true, but that's also where we failed because the armed forces of the Philippines did not address the propaganda of the enemy. And that's why we are here now. Until now, we have this insurgency. So this is now the time for us to understand that there's a problem with the effort of the government, especially the AFP. Whereas before, 90% of our effort was on tactical and 10% only to address the propaganda. Now, we would like to shift to the more important aspect of this political war, which is propaganda. So now, that's where Glenda Gloria came in with her comments. Maybe he doesn't agree. Maybe he wants the AAP to continue fighting the communists and not addressing the other issues like social issues and human rights issues. Well, your armed forces today are more professional, and we understand the dynamics of this insurgency. So now we are shifting towards this defeating the propaganda machinery of the AFP. And if they happen to be part of that machinery, then we will destroy it.
Well, that's not a very happy note on which to end the hearing, General. But as a civilian and as a former broadcast journalist, I can ascertain that journalists like Glenda Gloria are even more assiduous in pursuing social reforms and upholding human rights. An area of reforms, human rights, I mean, in which I would appreciate that the armed forces should continue to reform itself. Social reforms are not within, kumbaga, the shop of the armed forces and are left to civilian government. And again, as a former journalist and as a civilian, I can say that Glenda Gloria is not far off her pronouncements. In fact, she is exerting all efforts within her community of Rappler to uphold their duties as the fourth estate. But as I said, General and Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, just like the earlier discussion on the West Philippine Sea in its broadest sense, it's really an ongoing and important matter. This matter of upholding without prior restraint, upholding freedom of expression and press freedom without prior restraint and without these pressures of experienced red tagging or red baiting. At the same time, that as the Congress, we seek to support the armed forces in its reform and modernization efforts. I will leave it at that for now, General. Thanking you for engaging my very heartfelt questions. Salamat, and salamat po ng marami, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Any other?
Mr. Chairman, just
Senator Joel, are you there? Okay.
yes,
Recognized.
Mr. Chairman. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to ask questions anymore as I've been getting a lot of text messages from my tokayo, Congressman Joel Almario. I would just like to spread into the records my commendation to our nominees. I was listening attentively, especially on the topic of revolutionary government, that it is not only dangerous and amounts to inciting to sedition, but it's also, again, illegal. And any call to replace the constitutional order and is defined as a crime, ito pong revolutionary government, dapat tuunan natin ang pansin at we have to be very careful about this, and I hope that the government agencies or the authorities would look into this, investigate. Specifically, we're calling on the Department of Justice to look into this in this call for revolutionary government. Again, I'm very happy to hear the comments and statements coming from our nominees, and I would be supporting their confirmation not only in this committee but also in the plenary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. The chair has two very quick questions that I would like to address to General Tulato. When were you tested negative for COVID-19?
Sir, Mr. Chair, I was tested August 19, and
Okay, that's it.
yes.
When were you tested positive for the virus?
No, sir, the result is negative. I received the result last Saturday, sir.
So walang positive na test?
No, sir.
How come, we received this information that you were requesting for a waiver to be
Yes, sir.
physically present because you were tested positive. So that's why we were worried.
No, sir, that's not the context of my request, sir. My request is that because I made a request before I received the result of my swab test.
Okay.
So
So we're all safe. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Of course, sir.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend to the plenary the confirmation of the ad interim appointments and consent on the nomination of 15 senior officers in the armed forces of the Philippines. I so move.
Second
Is
the
there
motion,
any
Mr. Chair.
objection? Hearing none, the motion is hereby approved.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Majority Leader.
I'll be making the last motion, but before that, may I remind the members and participants who will attend the Committee on Rules and Resolutions meeting to remain in this WebEx online meeting room, as we will be using the same meeting link for the rules meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, there being no other matters to discuss, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Any objection? Hearing none, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
Pursuant to Section 27 of the Chapter 6 of the Rules of the Commission, which provides for the suppletory application of the rules of the Senate or of the House of Representatives on the conduct of sessions through electronic platforms. The first plenary session of the Commission on Appointments in the second regular session of the 18th Congress is hereby called to order. Let's all pause for a minute of silent prayer. Remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bagaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati't pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
The Secretary will please call the roll.
Advincula,
Here.
Corral, Almario,
Present.
Alvarez Jr., Cagas, Chipeco Jr., Rilon, Ferrer de Fort, Heron, Go, Ontiveros, Lacson, Marcos, Noel, Pancho, Pimentel III, Co,
Present.
Ramirez Sato, Revilla Jr., Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zamora, Subiri. The chairperson is present.
With with three members physically present and 17 virtually present, the total of 20, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Hanapin mo yung oath. Yung oath.
Majority Leader?
Mr. Chairman, we now proceed with the reading of the communications dated June 4, 2020 and July 31, 2019. May we ask the chairperson to recognize the secretary.
The Secretary will read the communications.
Secretary, Commission on Appointments. May we respectfully transmit a copy of the letter dated 31 July 2019, informing the Commission on Appointments that the Senate last 23 July 2019 elected Senators Franklin M. Drilon and Risa Ontiveros effective July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021 as members on the part of the minority. In yesterday's plenary session of the Senate, Upon the manifestation and request of Senator Drilon, the Senate President directed us to inform the Commission on Appointments of the minority in the Commission on Appointments, hence this letter. The Honorable Senate President Vicente C. Soto III, Chairman, Commission on Appointments, Macapagal Avenue, Pasay City. Attention, Secretary, Commission on Appointments. I have the honor to inform you that the Senate, on July 30, 2019, elected Senator Cynthia A. Villar, Jaime R. Marcos, Christopher Lawrence Go, Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, Francis Tol Tolentino, Angelo M. Lacson, Grace Po, Romain Bong Revilla Jr., Juan Miguel Mig Subiri, and Senator Joel Villanueva as members on the part of the majority of the Commission on Appointments. And also, last July 23, 2019, the Senate elected Senators Francis Kiko Pangilinan and Risa Ontiveros effective July 1, 2019 to June 30, 2020. Senators Franklin Drilon and Risa Ontiveros effective July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. And Senators Franklin M. Drilon and Francis Kiko Pangilinan effective July 1, 2021 and June 30, 2022 as members on the part of the minority. Very truly yours, Attorney Myra Villarica, Senate Secretary.
The election of Senator Frank Drilon as member of the Commission on Appointments on the part of the minority is hereby noted. The Chair would like to inform the body and place on record that Senator Drilon has already taken his oath as a member of the Commission through virtually through the Cisco WebEx platform as last August 3, 2020. So we may proceed with the agenda. The Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, we now proceed with the election of Senator Franklin M. Drilon as the Minority Floor Leader of the Commission on Appointments.
All right. Is there a nomination from the members of the minority?
Isa si Risa. Si Risa wala ba? Can we ask a 1-minute suspension, Mr. Chairman? 1-minute suspension.
All right. The session is suspended.
Oh, sir.
Congressman Advincula is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for the what you call that, the being majority floor leader, a minority floor leader, as Senator Franklin Drilon, the position of minority floor leader, Mr. Chair.
There is a motion to elect Senator Frank Drilon as the minority leader of the Commission on Appointments. Is there any objection? Hearing none. Senator Drilon is hereby elected minority leader.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask that Senator Franklin Drilon takes his oath as the Minority Floor Leader of the Commission on Appointments.
Yes, Senator Drilon will take his oath. You may read it. Yes.
Sabay kayo.
Ako si Franklin M. Drilon ng lungsod ng Iloilo ay team na nanumpa na tutuparin ko ng buong husay at katapatan ang aking katungkulan bilang minority floor leader ng Commission on Appointments. At sa abot ng aking kakayahan, ang mga tungkulin ng aking kasalukuyang katungkulan at ang iba pang pagkaraan nito gagampanan ko sa ilalim ng Republika ng Pilipinas na aking itataguyod at itagtatanggol ang siligang mataas ng Pilipinas na tunay mananalig at tatalima ako dito na susundin ko ang mga batas, mga kautosang legal at mga dekretong pinaiiral ng mga sadyang itinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas at kusa kong babalikatin ang pananagutang ito nang walang anumang pasubali o hangaring umiwas. Kasi hanawa ako ng Diyos.
All right, thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The new minority leader.
Congratulations.
Majority leader.
Wise and Frank.
Mr. Chairman, we now proceed with the adoption of the proposed amendments. I move that the body adopt the proposed amendments to Chapter 3, Section 10 of the new rules of the Commission and Article 4, Section 1 of the new rules of the standing committees to allow the conduct of plenary sessions and committee hearings through teleconference, video conference, webcast, or other similar reliable forms of remote or electronic means. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion to adopt Committee on Rules and Resolutions, Resolution number 3, to amend the rules of the Commission and the rules of its standing committees is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chair, may we now proceed to consider the recommendation of the Committee on National Defense on the ad interim appointments and nomination of 15 senior officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
Hearing no objection, the consideration of the recommendation of the Committee on National Defense is in order. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recognize Vice Chairperson of the Committee on National Defense, Senator Panfilo Lacson.
Senator Panfilo Lacson is hereby recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, happy birthday.
Thank you.
This representation as one of the vice chairpersons of the Committee on National Defense presided over a public hearing to deliberate on the ad interim appointments of 14 senior officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the nomination of one officer to the rank of Lieutenant General. Your committee, after deliberating on their qualifications and fitness during the said public hearing, has determined that all of the 14 appointees and one nominee are fit and qualified to the ranks which they are respectively nominated or appointed, and has therefore ruled to recommend to the plenary their respective nomination and appointments for the consent and confirmation of this august body. It is therefore my honor and privilege to recommend to the Commission the confirmation of the ad interim appointment of Lieutenant General Antonio G. Parlade, Jr. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Any objection?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Drilon is recognized.
Yes, this is not an objection. I cast an affirmative vote for the confirmation of the ad interim appointment of Lieutenant General Antonio G. Parlade. However, Mr. Chairman, I would like to spread into the record that at the hearing this morning in the committee, there were certain answers that the nominee gave to the questions we raised that compels me to put on record certain reminders to the good general. As I said, we are voting for him. We are casting an affirmative vote. But let me remind the good general that there is nothing in the anti-terror law that allows regulation of social media, that the prior restraint of speech and expression is opposed to our Bill of Rights, that the anti-terror law does not authorize the state forces to determine what the citizenry is allowed to do or say on social media, as the good nominee asserted during the committee hearing, but the citizenry is held responsible for utterances in social media which may constitute unprotected speech, as for example, inciting to sedition or inciting to rebellion, and where such utterances are made in social media, it is the duty of the nominee to prosecute them and file charges against them, because this indeed would be a violation of our laws. But certainly not tell the citizenry what the citizenry is allowed to do or say, because that connotes prior restraint. So it is with this reminder to the good general that yes, I vote for your confirmation, but please bear this in mind, especially when you participate in the drafting of the rules implementing the anti-terror law. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. So, any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend that this body give its consent to the nomination of Major General Corleto S. Binluan Jr. to the rank of Lieutenant General. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to recommend to this august body the confirmation of the ad interim appointments of the following senior officials of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Major General Edgar A. Arevalo. In this regard, Mr. Chairman, the Commission on Appointments extends our deepest condolences to Major General Arevalo. His beloved father just passed away a few minutes ago, or while we were waiting to confirm in plenary his ad interim appointment. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Please accept our condolences, and yes, the motion is approved.
Major General Tolentino. I so move, Mr. Chairman. Which Tolentino?
Yes, that was Major Tolentino. Next.
Major General Edgardo Y. De Leon. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may I
Senator
be allowed to
Speedy.
sponsor? Thank you, Mr. President. May I be allowed to sponsor the nomination of General Edgardo De Leon?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman. Honorable Chairman, Vicente Tito Soto III, by the way, whose birthday is being celebrated today. Happy birthday, SB Soto.
Thank you, sir.
Esteemed colleagues of both houses, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from the beautiful boundary of Bukidnon and Cagayan de Oro. It is my honor to speak before this honorable body to co-sponsor the confirmation and the ad interim appointment of Edgardo Yao de Leon to the rank of Major General of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Major General Boogie de Leon, as he's fondly called, has been in the military service for 35 years since he started as a PMA cadet in 1984. He is a skilled military commander, was garnered numerous awards and citations throughout his career, and we in Bukidnon were blessed to have been given the chance to work with him before he took on his current role as Deputy Chief of Staff of Military Operations at the General Headquarters of the AFP. And we, being a peaceful province today, is a testament of the work that he has done. Major General Boogie served as commander of the 403rd Infantry Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division of the Philippine Army in Malaybalay City, Bukidnon, from November 18 to January 2020. And during this very short stint, he was able to do so much for my beloved province. He is recognized for establishing the Convergence of Areas for Peace and Development, CAPDEV program, and for creating the Regional Task Force to end local communist armed conflict in the municipality of Cabanglasan in Bukidnon. We value the work that he has done to promote peace and order in our region, and his vast experience and expertise. I am confident that he can ably continue his work of bringing peace and development not only to Mindanao, but the whole nation as well. With the above mentioned points, Mr. Chairman, it is my honor to second the motion to confirm the ad interim appointment of General Edgardo Boogie De Leon to the rank of Major General of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Subiri. So, Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Major General Generoso M. Ponyo. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
To the rank of Major General. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Major General Piale John L. Bondok. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, it is likewise my privilege to recommend to this commission the confirmation of the ad interim appointments of the following officials. Brigadier General Arauz Robert F. Musico. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Brigadier
Mr.
General
Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Ontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy birthday po. I would like just briefly for the record to indicate my wholehearted support with pride and joy for the confirmation of Brigadier General Arauz Robert Musico, may mista, in the PMAC Nagtara class of 1986. Salamat, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Brigadier General Angelica D.L. Torres. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Brigadier General Carlito R. Bueno Jr. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Brigadier General Armel S. Tulato. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Brigadier General Norwin Romeo P. Tolentino. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Brigadier General Danilo O. Carino. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing no objection. Approved.
Brigadier General Andrew D. Costello. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing no objection. Approved.
And finally, Brigadier General Lyndon J. Sollesta. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The Senator Tolentino is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, just a manifestation of support to three distinguished officers that have been a while ago. Mr. Chairman, sinusuportahan ko po ang confirmation ni General Corleto Binluan. Inuna ko po siya ngayon. Unahin ko sana si General Parlade. Kasi kanina po halos mahigit 1 oras na at nasundan po, sumabog na naman po ang plaza ng Hulo. Usap ko po si General Binluan, dalawang sundalo kaagad natin ng nasawi, namamalengke sila at market day ngayon ng tropa sa Hulo. At ito po ay nagpapakita na sa balikat po ni General Binluan ay napakalaki ng nakaatang sa kanya ngayon. Hindi lang ang pagpapatakbo ng 1st Tabak Division, kabilang ang 2nd Scout Ranger Battalion, 1st LRA Battalion at Naval Forces Western Mindanao, pati po ang 3rd Air Force Division ng Philippine Air Force. Sa kanya pong balikat, nakasala ngayon ang kapayapaan at ang kaginhawaan ng mga kababayan. Napakatagal na po itong problema sa Hulo. So habang nag-uusap po tayo ngayon, meron na naman pong sumabog uli, General Binluan. We wish you good luck. And I'm sure pagbalik mo sa iyong AOR, ay napakaraming suliraning haharapin at alalahanin mo na hindi lang ikaw ang humaharap noon, ang buong bansang Pilipinas ay kasama mo. Para po kay General Parlade, Mr. Chairman, sinusuportahan ko po ang kanyang nominasyon at confirmation. Isa po sa pinakamakisig nating opisyal, si General Parlade. He rose from the ranks and distinguished to be recognized with distinction, having received several awards, including the Service Star in 2007 as Commanding Officer of the 4th Special Forces Battalion of 1st Special Forces Battalion at napakarami pang iba. At alam ko rin po na si General Parlade ay isa talaga sa mga may angking talino sa sandatahang lakas ng Pilipinas. Throughout his life, his love of country and dedication to service shone through. He is known as an anti-communist advocate and crusader and supporter of the anti-terrorism law. In fact, he is a key figure in the government's National Task Force to End Local Communist Conflict, NTF-LCAC, which spearheads the localized peace talks with individual fronts of the NPA and its militias. So marami pong umaasa sa inyong pagbabalik sa SOLCOM, General Parlade na itutuloy mo ang mga nasimulan mo. Para po kay General Edgardo De Leon, na nakilala ko bilang second lieutenant pa, no, ako'y bata-bata pa rin. Congratulations sa kanya. I repeat, I've gone through your credentials. There is no doubt of your selfless dedication and your patriotism. Yung kanina mga sinabi ko, light banter lang po yon. Wala naman pong magko-question sa iyong loyalty. I salute you for your commitment and tireless dedication as a servant of the Filipino people for the past 35 years as a member of the 1988 PMA class. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, sa tatlo pong ito at lahat po na nandito, pinapaabot ko rin po ang pakikiramay kay General Arevalo. Sa lahat po na naririto, congratulations and may you continue to bring honor and pride not only to the Philippine Army, Philippine Air Force, but to the entire armed forces of the Philippines. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino. The Majority Leader?
Mr. Chairman,
Opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Chairman, I move for Joel Villanueva to be recognized.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Majority Floor Leader. I would just like to make a very short manifestation. First of all, let me we wanted to greet a happy and blessed birthday to our Senate President, Senator Tito Soto, and we wish you all the best and may God bless you more. My second manifestation is to congratulate and associate myself in supporting the confirmation of our nominees. I was listening attentively this morning regarding different issues, especially the issue on revolutionary government, which they all agree that it's dangerous and amounts to inciting to sedition. And so let me just put that on record. And lastly, Mr. Chair, let me also take this opportunity to extend our deepest sympathies to our soldier, General Arevalo. Nakikiramay po kami. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva, and to all those who were greeting me. Thank you very much for your greetings and prayers. Thank you. So, Majority Leader?
Mr. Chairman, there being no other matters to discuss, I now move to adjourn.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, the session is hereby adjourned.
Happy birthday, SP!
Mr. Chairman.
Happy birthday, ISP. Happy birthday po.